Okay, so I've gone ahead and tentatively categorized everything here. Now, a couple things to note. In some cases, you may need to split some purchases. So how to do that? The easiest way to do that, very often my giving in tithe and offering is combined. So what I'll often do here is I'll select everything. I hold Command Shift and the down arrow, and that will select everything moving down. I'll hit copy, delete, and then I'll go ahead and do that paste without formatting again, just the values, and that adds a new line. So I just basically copied everything, deleted, and then paste separately. Now, why don't I use cut instead of copy? That's because it will sometimes mess up the formatting. So with that done, I can then go ahead and I can copy this, paste it here. Now I have it twice. I could just split this in two. So I could say 35, 35, 35, 35, and then I can make one of these offering for argument's sake. Okay. Now, another thing to note is that back under all accounts, there was the possibility of a duplicate existing here. So let's just say that the UPS one was a duplicate. So then all you would do is you would go in here and you would take this and you would just wipe that out. Then you would select everything else, copy, delete, paste. And then once you paste that in again, it's going to go in. Now you can also add notes. You could say, hey, from Amazon, I bought myself a Lego set, whatever the case may be. And then you have a note there for future reference, just so you know what things are. Now, honestly, the hassle every month is having to go into Amazon and figure out what was it that you bought, because it doesn't specify, but it's not too hard. And you can basically go through and you can categorize in that way. Once you've done this, you don't have to allocate things by month. It will immediately begin populating the correct months. So I'm just going to set this to February just to demonstrate this. So this will be in February, everything else will be in January. There are certain things here that we can do. For example, we could say that you'll see here is a reimbursement section, right? So this is a reimbursement. Well, was there something that needed to be reimbursed? Let's just say that this was it, even though it's not the same amount. And we'll say to be reimbursed. So I will do this all the time just so that later on when I get to reimbursements, it'll show me what was or wasn't reimbursed. You can also honestly just keep this in the category. So for example, if I spent out of my spending money a certain amount and then I received a reimbursement for that, I could just keep that under my spending money and it's going to reconcile on its own. But sometimes I like to just know how much stuff am I getting reimbursed for every year. So you have the option there. But let's make this make a bit more sense. So we go back to the month of January, and you'll note that back in transactions here, everything was on the date line was from January, except for one thing I put in February. So in February, you will see one thing here, and that should be an income of $1,024. Now note that the gift income line is not counted the same way. So when you go down to taxation here, that is not really tallied in the same way. So keep that in mind. Gift income is typically excluded just so that you can have at least one line item that may not need to be taxed. Whereas others, all of these others here should count towards taxation. And to confirm that, you can go into the formulas here and you'll see that it is basing this on L28 to 34, L28 to 34, which is down to here. So it's excluding that final line. Now, of course, if something needs to be taxed, then categorize it under one of the other categories. But I have this gift income line just because very often credit card rewards that you receive back are non-taxable, or you might get a loan that is deposited into your account. Whatever the case is here, that's what that line is for. Now, going back to January, one other thing I should mention is that you can also list prior balances. So for example, if I started the new year and my spending money, I had $100 left over from last year, I can put that in, and then that will calculate out the next month. So you'll see here, I still have $49 left after spending $61 and receiving nothing. Obviously, I need to set myself a budget, but essentially what will happen here is that it will show me in red anytime I exceed my budget. So if I have a budget of $30 for gas, but I spent $31, it will highlight red. If I have a budget of $31, you'll see it comes out even, but I'm a little bit too close. If I set it to $32 and I'm under my budget, then it goes away. So this is just a way to warn you that, hey, you've hit or exceeded your budget, you can't spend any more. And it's a very quick and easy, painless way to set things throughout the year and to immediately see what's going on. Now, obviously, I have a problem here because my actual spending is huge compared to my income. So obviously, you don't want to do that. But this is just a sample, so this will give you a good idea. Now, you'll notice that anytime I set something in my savings, that gets added in. And so then over here, I'll see, okay, how much did I spend? Oh boy, I I ended up having a huge decrease in my savings because I've spent $6,000 and I only planned for a small income. So obviously some things here will need to be changed. I didn't include a paycheck in my transactions. So if I were to do that, I could just add, I could pick one of these dates here. I could say a paycheck of, let's say $5,000, and we'll call it paycheck. And we'll say I came into my bank account and we'll put it under paycheck, right? So that immediately, of course, is going to change the game because now I've got a huge increase in total savings because I had $1 to begin with. If I had $1,000 to begin with, then my savings only goes up 416%. If I had $5,000 in my savings, it's only gone up a little bit. So whatever you start with, that's how your savings increase is going to be calculated. Now, keep in mind that this is going to be based on the accounts that you have in here. So for me, I really usually only have a checking account in here, but you could add all of your accounts and reconcile all of that if you want to. I don't keep it too complicated. I like to keep it as simple as possible, and so I don't do that as much, but it just depends on what you want to track. You can customize this accordingly. So with that said, we have now looked at how to go ahead and categorize all your transactions and then what that does in populating the month. This gives you a really good overview of how much you have spent. You get to see your actuals. You get to see the difference between that. So internet, I was supposed to spend 30. I actually spent 34. I've gone over by 4. That immediately tells me we have a problem there. I can also go through and see February, and it's going to have a rollover here, and I'm going to see, okay, I'm running behind on my budget here because I didn't have a budget. Okay, so maybe I need to budget something for this month. So I will budget, $40, right? And it's going to warn me for all successive months. When I try to edit this, in January it doesn't, but in other months it does, just because I'm breaking. Before I did that, it was pointing back to the previous months. Well, the moment that I go ahead and override this, I'm overriding some of that logic. That's okay, you can do that if you want. That's why it's in the color that is allowed for editing. But at least from this month on, you're going to start seeing that it has taken that new $40 budget and things will balance out over time. So that's basically what you do with this monthly. And in the next video, we will look at some of the other reporting options and seeing what you get from all of this budgeting.